Nope. Nope. I ain't trying to compete with you, man. That's funny. Oh, I see. There we go. Good now. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I am joined today by Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, State's Attorney Narcotics Division Chief Jennifer Brady, Police Commissioner Worley, Director Matt Vronis from Muncie, and members of BPD's Group Violence Unit. We are gathered here today to announce the takedown of a drug trafficking organization operating in the 900 block of North Broadway Street as a part of Baltimore's Group Violence Reduction Strategy in the Central District. Before I turn it over to the Deputy State's Attorney to go into details around the takedown, I want to thank the State's Attorney, his entire team, the brave women and men of BPD, our team at Muncie, for doing the work necessary to get these individuals off our streets. The foundation of our strategy relies on strong partnerships like the one you see before you today. Muncie, BPD, and the State's Attorney's Office to give group-involved individuals the choice to step away from a life that puts them and others at risk of losing their life or being a victim of violence. If they choose not to do that, then they will face the full consequences for continued participation in group violence. Together, we are once again gathering to send a unified and strong message that those who violate the Group Violence Reduction Strategy's anti-violence mandate by continuing to be involved in group activity will be held accountable. Thank you, and thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to the Deputy State's Attorney to share more about this particular investigation. Sir?
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Good morning. I'm Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, standing in for State's Attorney Ivan Bates this morning. I wanted to thank Mayor Scott, Commissioner Worley, Director Mavronis for collaborating with our office to be able to put this announcement together today. I'd like to acknowledge with me here today is our Narcotics Division Chief, Jen Brady, and Rachel Adekanya, who's an Assistant State's Attorney who worked on this case as well as the Group Violence Enforcement Team in taking down this DTO in the 900 block of North Broadway. Once again, the State's Attorney's Office and its law enforcement partners have dismantled another criminal group proliferating illegal drugs and violence in our city. Together, we have secured the indictments of 7 individuals trafficking drugs in the Gay Street neighborhood. Taking down these types of criminal enterprises allows us to return a better quality of life for those who live and work in the city. Our investigation began in January of this year. The 900 block of North Broadway has been a known open-air drug market, home to notable violence and illegal activity, including numerous shootings. During the course of the investigations, detectives employed multiple investigative methods to identify members of the DTO and distinguish the street-level dealers from the members who are running the operation. As a result of the investigation, the following individuals were identified as key members of the DTO. Tyrone Hill, who's age 30, Rashad McLean, who's age 26, Javon Hall, age 24, Devon Harris, age 30, Dennis Harley, age 24, Bernard Cure, age 44, and Paris Jones, age 34. On February 28th, the grand jury in Baltimore City returned indictments for all 7 individuals for distribution and conspiracy to distribute narcotics. 5 search and seizure warrants were subsequently secured and executed by Baltimore Police GVET members, along with fellow law enforcement partners, including the FBI, Baltimore County Police Department, BPD SWAT, BPD K-9, and BPD Central District officers. The additional charges were added, include conspiracy to distribute controlled dangerous substances, distribution of specific amounts of controlled dangerous substances, distribution of controlled dangerous substances, possession of a regulated firearm by a prohibited person, and the use of a firearm in the drug trafficking. This takedown is not only a win for public safety in Baltimore, but a win for the Gay Street neighborhood, whose residents and visitors deserve to enjoy their community in peace and safety. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Commissioner Worley now.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. This takedown is another example of what we can do when everyone works together in the crime fight. I want to thank the men and women of the BPD, specifically the Group Violence Unit and those in attendance, Detectives Moore, Santos, Smith, Sergeant Garcia, Lieutenant Hendricks, and their command staff is in attendance as well, Major Taylor, Captain Latanzi, and Lieutenant Colonel Velti. Thank you to Mayor Scott, the State's Attorney's Office, MONSE, and our regional law enforcement partners for their continued partnership and collaboration. We're all committed to working together to dismantle these open-air drug markets and criminal organizations. The safety and well-being of our community members continue to be our greatest priority. Through several investigative methods, including physical and electronic surveillance, we were able to identify 7 members of this drug trafficking organization. All of these suspects have prior arrests and 2 are repeat violent offenders. As part of the investigation, the following items were recovered: 6 guns, 2 assault rifles, approximately 80 grams of crack cocaine, approximately 2 pounds of cannabis, $10,000 in U.S. currency, and various other materials. The group violence reduction strategy is working. We are steadily reducing the number of homicides and shootings throughout the city, and we're keeping those who have greatest risk safe and alive. By working with MONSE, the mayor, our partners in the crime fight, and the community members, we are showing that this strategy is decreasing violence and improving the outcomes for those who want to be a part of the solution. We can offer pathways out of a life of violence. Justice will be served to those who don't accept our services or those who continue to cause the violence in our communities. There is no tolerance or disregard for the law. I will now hand it over to Director Mavronis.
Thank you, Commissioner Worley. The Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement stands here today in partnership with the Mayor, BPD, and State's Attorney's Office, the tri-party principals whose buy-in and investment makes this strategy possible. As with any significant law enforcement takedown connected to GVRS, the MONSE team activated a coordinated neighborhood stabilization response in the community surrounding 900 North Broadway. This stabilization is ongoing. The group violence reduction strategy hinges on balancing opportunity and accountability. Today's message is one of accountability. In 2022, at the start of this GVRS journey, we promised real opportunity alongside swift, certain, and legitimate consequences. People get on the radar of GVRS because they're identified as the most likely to be at the center of gun violence. Since the strategy's launch in 2022, 160 individuals who received a GVRS custom notification, a message tailored specifically to them, have decided to take the city up on the offer of services. Our GVRS participants work closely with life coaches at ROCA and youth advocate programs. They're prepared and matched with transitional employment, provided safety relocation where needed, and connected to other lifelines with them and their families in mind. And the collective team that makes up GVRS stays connected. As a result of the intensive life coaching model that's at the heart of the violence intervention strategy, GVRS participants are remaining safe, alive, and free. We follow their trajectory over time. To date, more than 91% of GVRS participants have not recidivated, and more than 93% of participants have not been re-victimized. But today's announcement is not a reason for celebration. It's serious and it's a promise. We're never going to apply enforcement measures simply because someone declined services. We want people to change their lives and accept our offer, but law enforcement will hold you accountable for continued engagement in violence and illegal activity. Today's takedown, which removed violent actors, drugs, and weapons from our streets, sends a clear signal to those who choose to continue causing harm. We will respond accordingly. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn it back to Mayor Scott.
Thank you, Director Mavronis. Our goal is always simple. Give those identified as being the highest at risk for involvement in violence to step away from the life that puts them and others at danger, or hold them accountable if they continue to do so. I say this at each of these takedown press conferences because that's the way the strategy works. Sending young men and women to prison is not our goal. It's to last resort and a necessary balance with the positive opportunities that we are providing. But we will not tolerate drug trafficking, violence, gun trafficking, and these behaviors in our city. Accountability is an important part of the overall strategy. Group members have to see, again, that there are swift, certain, and legitimate consequences for their actions if they refuse the mandate to put down the guns. To anyone else in the same boat, I implore you, this eventually will be you if you do not make the changes to your life. As you heard Director Mavronis talk about, we've been able to connect many people with life-changing services. We can connect you as well. However, the individuals who we are talking about today actively inflicted harm on our communities by carrying illegal firearms, as well as driving violent activity and the proliferation of illegal narcotics on our streets. This takedown is a direct product of those decisions. Outcry from the community who raised their voices against this kind of activity in their neighborhood, and diligent investigations by PPD's, GVU, and the state's attorney's office units. This is ultimately an intervention strategy. We cannot just be reactive when shootings happen. We want to get the drivers of violence who've made clear that they're committed to choosing their path in life and making that the wrong path out of our communities before they can inflict further harm. GVRS is a crucial component to Baltimore's comprehensive violence prevention plan, and something that my administration and our partners have made a priority to expand to additional areas of the city, starting with the Southern District by the end of the year. GVRS and our strong partnership with partners across the justice system and across the community have played an important role in reducing homicides by 33% and non-fatal shootings by 37% this year, which of course is on top of the historic drop in violence that we saw last year. This is about making sure that we maintain and pick up more momentum. We know it works, and the bigger the program grows, the more neighborhoods and residents in Baltimore will feel the impact. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
And we're going to do questions on the announcement first. If you have stuff that's off topic, we'll do that afterwards. Thank you.
David Collins, WMAR-TV. I'd like to reserve the right to come back for a follow-up. Other than DTO, do you guys have a name of this organization, and how much product do you think they were responsible for?
Jennifer Brady, I'm the Division Chief of Felony Narcotics within the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office. Yes, this group did call themselves Deaky Land Boys. The area in general was referred to as Deaky Land, and so they named themselves after the area, which is not unusual for drug trafficking organizations.
And the second part of my question was, how much product do you believe they were responsible for?
That's a hard question to answer, right? We only know what we saw during the time of the investigation, which started in January. So in January, we were able to see almost a daily exchange of specifically cocaine and cannabis from this drug trafficking organization. So as many buyers that they can interact with during that time period was how much was going out onto our streets. We got a decent amount of narcotics during the seizures from the search and seizure warrants, but to calculate the amount of damage total that they were doing is very difficult.
Next. Anyone for on-topic questions?
Hey guys, Dan Belson with the Baltimore Sun. There was talk of driving violence with this group. Did this investigation surround any specific acts of violence? And are any of the individuals here believed to be connected to those acts?
So to answer that question, yes, every corner, every area that GVRS puts their resources and time into investigation are areas that are involve violence. There were several shootings in that area, and because of that, that's where the investigation is targeting. Whether or not these individuals were suspects in those violence, none of them have been charged yet, and so they would be ongoing investigations that we aren't at liberty to talk about.
Thank you.
I guess I do have one on-topic question. You said this was indicted in February. Why are we finding out now? Is it because there was a superseding indictment with additional charges, I assume?
Yes, so superseding indictments were filed. The reason why the previous indictments are filed is that that was a result of our investigations. Then once the investigations are concluded and we get indictments by the grand jury, warrants were issued by a judge, and during that time period, we also obtained search and seizure warrants for their homes. So obviously we can't charge what we don't know is there yet. So once we did conduct those or execute those search and seizure warrants, and we were able to recover large amounts of CDS as well as several firearms, then those had to be charged in separate superseding indictments that we wrapped into the investigation and those charges. So because of that, and also because of the fact that we wanted to see the outcomes of some of these cases, and some of them have been resolved. In fact, 3 of these defendants have already pled guilty to the charges in the indictment. And that is a direct result from how involved and how well put together these investigations by the GVRS squad is. They take their time, they develop strong evidence, and because of that, the cases are resolved quickly. So we're here today, and 3 of them are already pled guilty.
Questions for the mayor and the police commissioner. Do you have any reaction to the video that came out yesterday of a detective holding a gun to the temple of a young man who's being restrained? And do you think it's appropriate that the detective is not even suspended?
You can, by all means. You said one time the questions first. Well, the question's been asked, so.
Yeah, the standard answer is it's under investigation. But if you've ever been fighting with a guy who has a gun and he's trying to free his hands, then you try to do whatever you can to get him in custody. So I can't say much more than that, but I've been in that position that officer was in. You're scared, you're fighting for your life because you don't know what he's going to do. So the officer did some things, we'll investigate it, and no, I'm not concerned that he's not suspended because he was out there doing his job. He was in an area that we want him to be in. He was going after individuals with guns.
And I'll just add, Justin, you know, as I always say, we investigate everything thoroughly, and any action that should be taken will be taken.
Paul Gessler with WJZ. You referenced the 3 already who pleaded guilty. I'm looking in case search. All of them just have supervised probation. Are you going to be seeking jail time for the remaining cases? Is supervised probation good enough from your point of view for this type of operation?
So the individuals that received probation are actually, part of that probation is the ROCA program. And so they've taken the opportunity to take advantage of that program. The other individuals are charged with handguns, firearms, or trafficking. They are facing much more significant and mandatory minimum sentences because of that. And so they are still pending trial.
And perhaps this has been asked already, but have any of the guns been tied to violent crimes or just open investigation?
So we don't discuss what you're probably referring to, which is IBIS leads. We don't discuss that because IBIS leads are only investigations. They have to be confirmed. They have to be followed up. So we don't discuss that.
Hi, I have 2 questions for the commissioner and then 1 follow-up for the mayor. The violence in the Western District, it's been particularly violent in July. 5 homicides, 4 shootings, non-fatal so far in just a 12-day period. What's behind this violence? Is this guns, drugs, gangs, retaliatory, and how is the department responding?
Well, we've noticed it early on, the continued violence in the Western. It's frustrating a little bit because we got a lot of resources there, but we have several investigations that are going on. We do know there's some back and forth that we're on top of. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to prevent some cases, but we've got some investigations ongoing, and I think you'll see some results in the very near future. But that is our #1 priority right now is the Western because they have the most homicides and shootings in the city. And we're putting everything we can there as long as we can to try to quash some of these issues, ongoing issues that are leading to violence.
What exactly do you mean by back and forth? If you could
What was that?
elaborate. What exactly do you mean by back and forth, if you could elaborate?
Well, just like almost any shooting, if you shoot one of mine, I'm going to shoot one of yours, and these different organizations are similar to what we have now, drug trafficking organizations who go back and forth with squabbles over whatever they argue over and fight over, and it leads to gun violence.
So this transition seems to make more sense for me right now. I hear what you're saying, Mayor, about GVRS. Given those statistics and what we're talking about right now, is GVRS still working in West Baltimore? Has it ever been working?
I think that we know that, as I always say, women lie, men lie, numbers don't. The numbers will tell you, and we have the academic support to say that it does work. I think that you're also letting out that we know that violence, even homicides in the Western District are still down from where they were last year. We know that GVRS works, no matter how many people may want to say it doesn't work. You hear from our partners here that says it works. When you have a program, a focused deterrence program that's been proven not just to work in West Baltimore, but in Baltimore, but in city and city and city and city again, it will behoove us all to get out of these wants and needs to have political divisiveness and spread misinformation. The residents of Baltimore should understand that this program works, and this a large part of the reason of how we're having historic reductions of violence in the city of Baltimore, period.
My other question surrounds the Northeast District. We had a report yesterday, this might also be more for the Commissioner. We had a report yesterday about only 2 officers being assigned and others were brought on with overtime. How can you ensure the safety of the public with that staffing number?
What was that again?
We had a report yesterday about 2 officers assigned to the Northeast District and the others had to be brought on through overtime. So the question is about staffing.
Yeah, the staffing, I don't think we've ever had a shift that only had 2 officers on it. A lot of people like to exaggerate our staff shortages because of other things that are going on, but we have never had a shift that only had 2 officers. We have plenty of resources around the city that we can move there. The officers are going to go out with the strength that they're supposed to go out, and we'll supplement with admin people. We can supplement with overtime. We can move people from our DAT units, we can move people from our specialized units or other parts of the city. So our biggest thing is to keep the public safe and to keep our officers safe. And also to go back to the violence in the Western, one of the things with the group violence reduction strategy, excuse me, is as we take these drug trafficking organizations off the street in the Western, there's an addiction problem in the city, and we're working to try to solve that with our partners. But there's a lot of individuals who look for the drugs, and when we take one organization off, there's another organization trying to move into that territory, and we have to continually stay in the Western, which we are doing, and we will win the Western, and we'll win the rest of the city. We're winning it now, and we're going to continue to do better as it goes on.
And just one last thing to add to, I think it's important to add for context, I hope the context matters, is that you have to remember that the Western District today includes places that wasn't in the Western District when we started GVRS. The district has expanded through redistricting, and we have to always consider that as well. Sir?
Mayor Scott, good morning. Great to see you again.
He could have raised the mic for you, but
Sorry,
that's
I can kind of squat a little bit. Being talked about on our way in, I'm sorry to go off topic, but the president, there was a report on Axios that he might be willing to drop out this weekend, getting pressured from several congressional Democrats. Do you have any reaction to that? You have been very supportive of his.
Yeah, I'll say what I said to your colleagues, C4 and Brian Neiman last week. If the president decides to drop out, right, then the vice president should be the nominee, period. It's literally the reason why we have the position. She's been doing the work and doing a great job of doing the work. When you think about the work, particularly that connects to the city of Baltimore, knowing that the Office of Gun Violence Prevention reports up through the vice president, knowing all the work that she's doing, I know that she's meeting with some of my mayoral colleagues today, right? We know who it should be. And I want to, again, send the message out to everyone, but in particularly to my fellow Democrats, that if anyone goes out and says that it should be anybody other than the vice president, then they're showing their true selves. But more importantly, I want them to hear me very clear. If you say that it should be someone other than the vice president, if you go out and try to make it you, if you are running the risk of having your party lose the group of people who have saved this country in election after election after election in black women. And I want you to know that they are watching you very closely. And you're also putting this country at risk simply because you don't want the nominee to be a woman who just happens to be black. We are talking about the most important election in the history of this country. When you have on the other side two folks who, quite frankly, should scare anybody in being the leaders of the free world. You have a vice presidential candidate who openly is against abortion in any case, even in rape or incest. We have these folks who are supporting Project 2025 that will turn this country into a dictatorship of something like you've seen in the 1800s in Europe. That's the risk that you're running. If the president decides to drop out, the vice president is the only person that should be on the ticket.